What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I wanted to talk to you all about the critical hit controversy going on with the one D&D playtest material. But first, big announcement for those of you that have been fans of the channel for a while, fans of the podcasts, things like that. We have a merch store, thegeekpantheon.com. If you go check it out, we have shirts, sweaters, hoodies, coffee mugs. Here's a coffee mug with the Geek Pantheon logo. We have bottles with like quotes from Eberron Renewed, the actual play podcast. Here is a hoodie with the Geek Pantheon on it, with a D20. You know you want it. So go check it out, thegeekpantheon.com, link down in the description below. Go get some sweet merch. Do it. Anyway, on with the video. Thank you all for joining me as we discuss the one D&D playtest material once again, because between this and Spelljammer, it's all people want to talk about. So the critical hit rules, for those of you unfamiliar, please show me your online life because it's much healthier than mine. Crits as they currently work. Natural 20 on an attack roll results in an automatic hit. Natural 1 results in an automatic miss, regardless of any modifiers. Additionally, anybody can crit. DM rolls a natural 20, player rolls a natural 20, regardless of class. Every class can crit. Every monster can crit. And you deal double damage. You roll twice the amount of dice. This would include sneak attack and smite damage at most tables. Okay. The new 1D&D playtest rules indicate when you roll a natural 20 on any roll, you automatically succeed. Natural 1 on any roll, you automatically fail. Additionally, critical hits, as they relate to attack rolls, only happen when a player rolls a natural 20 with their character, and only if they are dealing with a weapon attack roll or an unarmed strike. So spells can no longer critically hit, and additionally, you only double the weapon damage die. And then additionally, if you don't have a weapon damage die from your unarmed strike, then you wouldn't be able to crit either. So this has caused a lot of controversy, specifically taking critical hits away from spellcasters. Now, I will reiterate, this is playtest material. Playtest. These are not new rules. They are trying something out. They threw it out there to see what the reaction would be. Based on the reaction, I imagine not a lot of this is going to stick. So I wanted to discuss what I think they were going for with the removing critical hits from spellcasters and how I think they should go about fixing it. So obviously, having played a long-form campaign, Eberron Renewed Campaign 1 used D&D 5th edition, and we went to level 17, I think. We had a ranger cleric, a warlock paladin, I think was what he multiclassed into. It's been a while. And a rogue, a swashbuckler rogue. The rogue would comment about the fact that when it was his turn at higher levels, he was going to hit him with his stick because he had a walking cane / ribbon weave was his weapon. And, he would say it cheekily. He wasn't actually mad, but he would see what the other two could do with the ranger and cleric spells and the warlock paladin, just whatever conglomeration. There was a lot of homebrew in this campaign. But anyway, so the thing that was missing was the utility, the cool things that they could do, not the sheer amount. Nobody was envious of the sheer amount of damage that the rogue could do, even though at that high level, when he critted, his weapon damage plus his sneak attack was huge damage spikes. But nobody really... in my experience, nobody was clamoring for that amount of dice to be rolled when they did damage. Nobody was jealous of the rogue's critical damage. And I feel like that is what Wizards expects to be the soothing balm, is that, martial characters are the ones that get to do a bunch of damage. Fighters get to crit a lot because they're making a bunch of attacks, etc. And I just don't think that is what people want. I don't think that's what martial characters want. Certainly not what spellcasters want, to no longer be able to critically hit. So I will say, I think that there is a better solution out there than taking critical hits away from spellcasters. And I get that it's like less than 20% or around 20% of all spells have an attack roll. And so the amount of times that a spellcaster can crit is already super duper low. But as somebody that plays a warlock, I use Eldritch Blast a fair amount. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy being able to crit with that. So, and all that to say, there may very well be, we haven't even gotten the classes yet for the 1D&D playtest. So the warlock might have a feature that says, because warlock is so cantrip heavy, because warlocks have so few spell slots, warlock might have a class feature that says warlocks with cantrips can critically hit. We don't know yet. We're all making a lot of assumptions and having big reactions over something that we don't fully understand. So knock it off, me. But I think a better approach to this would be to steal a page out of, I think these were in 3.5, but they are certainly in Pathfinder First Edition. Steal a page out of their book with the new leveled feat system. You can do feat trees like critical feats, which are a thing in Pathfinder. I know because I did a Pathfinder First Edition campaign where I built a crit fisher. Like, my whole character concept was I want to critically hit as much as possible, and I want to do amazing things when I crit. And so I became very familiar with the critical feats in Pathfinder First Edition. Whether it was expanding my crit range, I think I hit the point where I would critically hit on a 14 through 20 was how often I was critting. And then I could, cast spell-like abilities on my crits whenever I would land them, which was a lot of fun. And it gave me those cool, epic moments, even though I wasn't I think I was a rogue in that campaign. So I wasn't like a spellcaster, but I still got to do a lot of really cool spell-like things pretty frequently because my crit range was high. So I think introducing a means for a character to be created in that vein, to where you could have a fighter that gets to do all the cool things. It's very 4th edition-esque, where you take these martial characters and give them big things that they can do relatively consistently. It's still up to chance because you're still rolling a d20 and you need it to land on a certain number. And you could even remove, I know a lot of people don't like crit ranges and expanding the crit range. Sorry, but that's the path we're going down. So I just want to talk about the critical feats that are available in Pathfinder First Edition and how they could be brought into D&D, 1D&D, or whatever we're going to call the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So I am finding all of these on D20 PF SRD, the SRD for Pathfinder First Edition that I used all the time when I was playing the game. And it's under the combat feats. Critical feats is the page that I'm on. There are 22 feats. I'm just going to very quickly touch on each of them, talk about the ones that I want to get a bit deeper in, talk about whether or not I think that they would work in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition as it currently exists, because we don't know enough about the full 1D&D experience yet to speak on that. Okay, so like I said, I'm just going to go through these and do kind of a deep dive on the ones that I want to, but a lot of them are self-explanatory. And I'm going to get into the prerequisites and how I think they should transfer into a leveled feat system for D&D. So the first one is critical mastery, which is you have to have any of the other 2 critical feats and be a level 14 fighter specifically. I think this works great. I think having class-based feats and the prerequisite being baked into it is phenomenal. And essentially, you can apply any 2 effects to your critical hit. So you can take 2 of these critical feats on the same critical hit, which, yeah, huge. Critical versatility. Fighter 11 have to be human. Don't like that. I would just have it be Fighter 11. But once per day, you can spend an hour practicing maneuvers to gain 1 critical feat that you meet the prerequisites for. And you gain the benefits of that until you choose to practice for a different one. So you have, and you don't even have to have, it's not a feat that you already have, because obviously you would already have it, but you can gain access to any of them that you meet the prerequisites for, which is pretty cool. Improved critical, proficiency with the weapon, and a base attack bonus of 8. So this is where the pure level would come in terms of, as it relates to proficiency bonus, I feel like. So having it be proficiency bonus plus 4, or just have whatever level the character would first gain that proficiency level be the prerequisite. But this is double the threat range of your weapon. Pretty good, especially if you're a champion fighter. You're going from 1920 to 1820, which is statistically a big jump. I mean, it's from 10% to 15%, but it's triple what everyone else will have. And if you're playing a fighter and making 3, 4, 5 attacks a turn, you're going to be critting like crazy. Next one is critical focus. This is once again base attack bonus 9. So have it be a proficiency bonus. This one is +4 in attack rolls made to confirm critical hits. Obviously in D&D, you don't have to confirm critical hits. So I would just scrap this one or change it to something else. Like maybe after your next attack roll, after you've rolled a crit, you have advantage automatically. So you're effectively increasing your likelihood to crit once again, if you wanted to do something like that. A curse critical focus is a prereq for this, so obviously that would go away. And this one has the ability to cast bestow curse or major curse caster level 9. So this would be one, whereas the critical mastery, where you're applying 2 effects to your critical hits, and critical versatility, where you are able to learn various critical feats for free. A curse critical is specifically for spellcasters, and it's when you land a critical hit, you can cast a curse as part of that attack. So you could do bestow curse or major curse as part of that attack. So I think this is pretty cool. Being able to do bestow curse just for free when you land a critical hit would be really cool. And I think expanding it to like Hex or these other one, Hunter's Mark, if you had a tag for spells like that where you're cursing or applying this ongoing effect, I think would be a really cool function and feature. And yeah, I think that would be neat. Vanishing Critical, ability to cast dismissal or banishment, caster level 9. Oh, and once again with the caster level, you could make it a specific class, like your arcane class or your caster class has to be of a certain level. Honestly, I would maybe remove that. I would just make it a proficiency bonus thing, or just a straight level requirement, like level 8, level 9. And then as long as you have the ability to cast that spell, then you're good to go. But having the separate caster level, I don't want to bring over everything from Pathfinder because it can be pretty convoluted. But anyway, Banishing Critical, when you confirm a critical hit with a slashing or bludgeoning weapon, you can cast dismissal or banishment on the target as an immediate action. And the target takes a -4 penalty on its save to resist the spell's effect. You have to have one of those spells prepared or otherwise available to cast, and using this ability, cast the corresponding spell. So you are using the spell slot that you would normally be using to cast it. And like I said, I like this. I think being able to cast spells in addition to critting is really cool, especially for these classes like the Eldritch Knight, the fighters that get access to spells. I think this would be a really cool way to really bump up their utility and what they can do. Additionally, like I said, a lot of this is to beef up martial characters, and we're getting into some of the more utility stuff that is purely like you don't have to have the ability to cast anything. But I think this is a really cool way of making crits special and more than just doing more damage. So next one's Bleeding Critical, base attack bonus +11. I'm just going to say find the right level to slap these on, and critical focus is a prereq, but we're not doing confirmed criticals, so we can just get rid of that as a prereq. Bleeding Critical, whenever you score a critical hit, the target takes 2d6 bleed damage. Blinding Critical, target is blinded. Censoring Critical, the victim is unable to speak for 1d4 + 1 rounds. For a caster, if you hit a caster that has a verbal components for their spells, huge. Or the leader of a battlefield, somebody directing their fellow combatants or their allies against you all, huge. Crippling, their speed is halved when you score a critical hit. Deafening Critical, target is deafened. Exhausting Critical, when you score a critical hit, target is exhausted. For D&D, we would add 1 level of exhaustion. So if you are a oh my gosh, I just think about like a fighter at high level with so many attacks that they can do on a single round. And if they've expanded their crit range and they're able to kill a monster just via levels of exhaustion, like that would be huge. That might be too powerful, but you know what? You just make it a higher level. You don't let a character get this at level 4 or 8. You make them wait. Because, you know, exhaustion in Pathfinder works differently. It's a -6 penalty to strength and dexterity. And they move half their speed and cannot run or charge. So it is different, but I feel like with one level of exhaustion, it's less powerful. It's not really until you get to like the third level of exhaustion that you're surpassing. That's going to take 3 critical hits to do. And that's assuming that you don't want to do something else with your critical hit. So yeah, I think that's fun. Impaling critical. This one requires a weapon specialization with a piercing weapon. Like I said, weapon proficiency with a piercing weapon, because we don't have weapon specialization yet. If they introduce something like that, okay. But may impale and deal extra damage to opponent with a critical hit. But impale is a whole different, like it's a functional thing in Pathfinder, so probably wouldn't bring this over just because it's a whole other set of rules. And then you have improved impale, which impaled opponent must succeed at a grapple maneuver to pull your weapon out. Sickening critical. When you score a critical hit, your target is sickened. This I would effectively make poisoned, like poisoning critical. Because it's effectively the same thing. It's a -2 on checks. Staggered, staggering critical. Target is staggered when you land a critical hit on them. Staggering creatures they may take a single move or standard action each round. They can still take bonus reaction, all that kind of stuff, but they have to pick between a move and an action. Would be effectively what you're doing when you stagger someone. Stunned critical, where you can stun somebody when you land a critical hit. Fatigued is another one where, and once again, this fatigued is different. It's like a lesser version of exhaustion. Maybe make it something like, I don't know, restrained or paralyzed, like something really beefy. Obviously not unconscious or incapacitated, because that's like effectively killing them, but you get what I'm saying. Vanishing critical. So this is, you have to have a couple of prerequisites, but when you confirm a critical hit against a target while using arcane strike, so this is a specific ability, but we could do this with smite for paladins. We could have a smiting critical, something along those lines, or with a weapon enhanced by your arcane pool. Once again, like if making a weapon attack as part of a spell, like Green Flame Blade could also apply here. If the target was summoned by a spell you identified, they may succeed on a will save, or be sent back to its home plane as per the dismissal spell. So if it's like summoning creatures or creatures from another plane, you could use this to dismiss them. Pretty neat. Pretty cool function of something like smite. Blighted critical. So blighted and greater blighted critical, and blighted critical mastery. The last 3 here are really interesting because they function on something called spell blights, which are something in Pathfinder that are conditions, but they're really unique conditions specifically for spellcasters. And I think the introduction of spell blights might be the best way to make martial characters feel like total badasses, especially against casters. The idea that, and it, with the Pathfinder feats, it's caster level, so you would have to be able to cast spells. I think just saying a critical hit with a weapon attack that is not made with a non-magical weapon. So effectively, if you are attacking with a magical weapon, something that's fueled by magic, then you can gain access to the spell blight criticals. So I'm just going to get into some examples of spell blights. Not going to read all of them because there are quite a few, but I definitely think this is one of the keys to really making martial characters feel awesome, especially when they're facing a spellcaster. So for minor spell blights, we're looking at things like caster blank. So after targeting a creature with a spell, the caster cannot target that creature again with a spell until caster blank is removed. So this idea that they can't focus on a single creature, and eventually they're going to run out. So they, in order to suppress it, they have to spend an action concentrating to shake off the effect. So they have to waste an entire round of combat where they could be casting a spell. Granted, they might still have access to bonus action spells. But yeah, it would affect them deeply. Now, caster blank only affects spells that target creatures. So if they're using area spells, then it's going to be less effective. Caster croak. Every time they cast a spell, there's a 20% chance to fail because they're having a hard time speaking, casting a spell with verbal components. And they have to spend their bonus action to speak. Like they have to focus on speaking because their vocal cords are restricting and make it harder and harder to speak. Ebon Eyes is a really cool one. Like basically their eyes get covered with dark, like a dark cover, a dark sheath, and it flips their ability to perceive light and darkness. So bright light becomes complete darkness becomes bright light, dim light is normal light is dim light, etc. But like if you're going up against a drow spellcaster and you hit them with this and all of a sudden they're dazzled because all of a sudden the darkness that they normally thrive in is like piercingly, like almost sunlight-esque, I as a dungeon master would absolutely impose their negative on when they're in sunlight if a player character hit them with Ebon Eyes. I think that would be really cool. And so yeah, you get these abilities to mess with spellcasters. And then for major spell blights, a negated spellcaster has its ability to manipulate magical energies disrupted. Gain something called spell resistance equal to 10 plus twice the highest spell level they can cast. So if they can cast 5th level spells, then we're looking at a 20. And they have to make a caster level check, which is just 1d20 plus their caster level. I would make it a concentration check, like a concentration check against the spell resistance. Now, at really, really high levels, that could potentially become insurmountable. But once again, balancing would need to be looked at and tweaked in order to make a lot of these things work. Spell burn. Every time a spellcaster afflicted with this spell blight casts a spell or uses a spell-like ability, their skin feels like it burns as if they were on fire. With a successful concentration check, they can ignore the pain of the effect, but if they fail, they are staggered for a round. While the caster is staggered by this spell blight, any spell with the fire descriptor that they cast has its saving throw increased by 1. So yeah, I mean so this stuff is just so interesting and cool and dynamic, and would make fights for martial characters feel different. It would hit different, literally. Especially for fighters, barbarians, these classes, they get to start hitting more and more and more on a single round, on a single turn. Not just are they dealing a bunch of damage, but they're getting to do cool things in combat, which is what is missing for martial characters. It's not, I don't know, it's not that spellcasters need to not be able to crit so that martial characters can feel cooler because now they're the only ones that can crit. Give the martial characters more things they can do when they crit, and then everybody's happy. And you can make a lot of these contingent on, you could do when using a weapon attack or an unarmed strike for the prerequisite for a lot of these things to make it exclusive to those classes. Because yeah, when a caster crits, they might deal a fair amount of damage, but they're also more than likely going to be doing some other stuff with that hit. I mean, you look at warlocks with Eldritch Blast and all the different Eldritch invocations that can make Eldritch Blast do cool things. Just do that with feats and weapons. I think it's pretty simple, and I think it would be really cool. Anyway, let me know what you think down below. Do you think there's no problem with crits as they currently exist and Wizards should stop trying to fix them? Or do you think there are some tweaks that need to be made? Do you have different ideas? Let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Eric, and I will see you next time.